It's the most wonderful time of the year for some people, especially those of you that are major fans of recruiting. We are beginning can be considered the unofficial beginning of the recruiting cycle for the next year for collegiate football. So we're going to talk about a breakdown of dates to keep in mind for the recruiting cycle, but also go ahead and take a look ahead at what the priorities position-wise need to be for Auburn football. Welcome to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here and on our podcast network may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any content, and thank you to members of our booster club like Elizabeth Owen, who help produce videos like this. Let it never be said that I spent enough time on recruiting. This is 2 days in a row that we're going to be talking about it here on this channel, but for good reason. This is the unofficial start of recruiting for the 2023 year. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, Kyle, we're still in the 2021, 2022 calendar year. Even if you look at the official dates on the NCAA website, it even says as much. But really, this is the unofficial start because we're moving into a period of time where everybody is gearing up in terms of contacting them from phones and things like that. No big visits that coaches can make, but players can start coming this way as well. So what that means is that the Tigers are now in full force trying to make a statement in year 2 for Coach Bryan Harsin, and I think it's a very important year for him to set the stage and firmly set the foundation for what the future looks like with him. So for this video, what we're going to do is take a look at the calendar very briefly to give you some dates to keep in mind and why this date, March 1st of 2022, is important for the start of the process, or the quote-unquote unofficial start of the process. And then I want to give you my top 5 positional priorities for the Tigers in this recruiting cycle. It'll be interesting to come back and watch this if you are watching this off in the future to see how everything folded out over the time period. So you can find all this information in terms of dates that are important and how long they stretch on the NCAA website by just type it in NCAA recruiting calendar and it'll bring it right up for you. There are a couple of periods to keep in mind: the quiet period, the dead period, the evaluation period, and the contact period. We're not going to so much be talking about the contact period here because what we are moving into now, starting on March 1st, 2022, is the quiet period. Now, that may sound really boring, and it doesn't mean that there's not going to be any exciting things happen. What's really not exciting is the dead period, where there's no contact pretty much whatsoever, from what I understand. Do things happen during the dead period? I'm sure, but we'll probably never know those type of things. But the quiet period is described as a period of time when it's permissible to make in-person recruiting contacts only on the member institution's campus. No in-person, off-campus recruiting contacts or evaluations may be made during this quiet period. This will stretch from March 1st to April 14th. Now, obviously, this isn't just for Auburn, but for all of college football. This is an important time period because you're moving into your spring practices and your spring games, which a lot of college football teams do hold, and it's a very exciting time for them. What's important about this time period is this is about the recruits being contacted via phone or however means that they do these days. We got Zoom, so they got to throw that in there as well. But also convincing them to make a choice to come visit our campus, especially if they want to come to A-Day weekend, which is probably the big time that you want to compete to get them here on campus to see the fanfare and everything else going on campus. And while that's what we're really focusing on right now in this video, and just for purposes of looking ahead, there's also the evaluation period, which will start on April 15th and run through May 31st, which is a lot of the summertime. A lot of summer camps going on, coaches making visits, shaking hands, gripping and grinning, all that good stuff, just trying to get faces in front of these athletes and make relationships with them, or at least further those relationships that they've already hopefully been doing thus far. So this is where things kick into overdrive for Coach Bryan Harsin, but also his lead recruiting coordinator in Zach Etheridge. This is a very important time, and obviously I'm just a fan perspective on the outside. They know what their team needs better than anything, but we're just going to talk from our perspective, and I think a lot of us will agree on this top 5 positions that need to be addressed in the 2023 recruiting cycle. And keep in mind, just because we put something in a certain order doesn't mean that anything that wasn't mentioned isn't a priority as well. In fact, if there's a position where we don't even mention that we get an opportunity to get a high-rated recruit, obviously you take that option, even if you don't necessarily need them at the time. You don't say no to the recruits that are highly regarded that want to come at least see you and maybe be a part of your program, even if it's already a little full at that position. Looking at you, quarterbacks. I don't think this is going to be a super shocking list, so let's start off with number 5. And I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there that I think number 5 is going to be defensive lineman. Now, this is a crucial position year in and year out because the game is won at the line of scrimmage, more so on the offensive line. Obviously, they are going to be coming up later in this list. But defensive lineman, I think, is going to be very important. We're in very good position with Derek Hall and others deciding to come back for another year, which will solidify them for this year with a lot of exciting talent behind them, whether it's Jeffrey Imba, Jason Jones, who's a transfer. There's still Zacchaeus Walker back, Dylan Brooks, and others. A lot of talent behind that, but you still need to kind of fill that in and keep that going. That's the problem that started with the offensive line, is there was this gap where we really weren't able to get some solid people in for a long period of time, and it created this gap in talent and depth. What happens when someone goes down or something like that, it really falls off. So that's why it's important always to be constantly recruiting well at the defensive line position. Number 4, linebackers. Obviously, Owen Popo coming back and taking the spring to heal up is going to be nice. A lot of people are excited about Wesley Steiner and his potential at that position. You can kind of throw the edge rusher position in here as well, Iku Leota, but he's technically a defensive lineman. It gets a little complicated, but there's a lot of talent here this year with a lot of promising talent behind them as well. Kind of similar to the defensive lineman situation here. I do think it's important, though, to find the next guy to be the leader. It seems like year in and year out, Auburn has had that guy at this position, whether it's the middle linebacker position, the weak linebacker position, that has been the lead person. So we definitely need to find that next one to build up the next group. Maybe they're already here in Robert Woodyard, but I'm going to say keep that momentum going at this position. Number 3, let's move on to offense, and we're going to start off with wide receivers. A lot of people are very frustrated with this position because of the tumultuousness that's happened even in season with firing of Cornelius Williams, players deciding to leave, certain players deciding to come back. It's been really crazy and hectic over this time, and it's the final coach that we were able to piece together for the offseason. The one thing that I think everybody will agree is that nobody has become the guy yet at this position. So my recommendation is, until someone steps up, we need to go find the guy. And I'm not talking about just one, maybe 2 big names out there. They tried to do that this last recruiting cycle with Darius Clemens, but wide receiver is something that really needs to have one of those big personalities there that kind of draws the attention away and opens things up for others. You saw what happened with Seth Williams. He drew all the attention. It opened up opportunities for Anthony Schwartz, Elijah Canyon, and others. So that is definitely what's needed here, is to find at least one big name that you can draw in to be a part of this offense for the future. Number 2, running back. Auburn has long been known as running back U and has pretty much for the most part maintained that over the years. With Tank Bigsby coming back, obviously, that's going to be a high point for the Tigers on offense with what he's able to do as a talent, and being followed up by Jarquez Hunter makes you feel really good about his skill set and what he does as well. There's also some talent behind the Tigers, so it's not necessarily a matter of depth, but it's a matter of, similar to the linebackers, finding the next big guy to bring up amongst the rank. Tank was in a unique position where he was such a talent, and there was probably an opportunity to overtake some people in the depth chart that he was able to do that as a freshman. I feel pretty good about where we're at depth-wise right now, but we need to start finding the guy who's going to become that over 1 or 2 seasons sitting behind in the depth chart. Damari Alston, I think I'm very excited about, but there's room in this recruiting cycle to go out and find what people would call a stud running back and bring him into the Plains to learn and grow over time. So while it's not an area where we'll see a lot of recruits, I'm sure, I do think we need to go find the guy. And number 1, the most obvious pick out there, offensive lineman. I think I've seen more hair pulled out virtually over this position than I have in quite some time. We all know it. The coaches know it. The players know it. The offensive line has underperformed for way too long, multiple seasons now. Now, a lot of us assumed that we would have a complete turnover this season at that position, but a lot of players took that extra year they were able to get and come back. And I do think, even with some of the frustrations that we've had with some of these guys that are coming back as a unit, not necessarily individually, it will be a good thing in a time where we didn't recruit as well at this position for the 2022 cycle. This is the year where Will Friend, the offensive line coach, has to follow up on the name that he's built for himself at other institutions as a massive recruiter at the offensive line position and developer of talent. So a lot of people have an idea out there that we need 5 offensive line recruits. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm not so much concerned about the number or the stars or anything like that. I'm concerned about quality. We're off to a good start with our first pickup in the 2023 cycle of Braden Jordan out of our backyard in Auburn. So I like where we're heading so far this year. Wilfriend, all eyes are on you, my friend. So those are my perspectives on the official start date of the 2023 recruiting cycle. I want to know what you thought about my position ranks. If you see something as a bigger need or a lesser need, how you would rank those, share those down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this type of content, please do help support it by smashing that like button. If you want more from us, be sure to hit the subscribe along with the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads or live streams. There's other ways to help support our content listed in the description, such as becoming a member of the E2C Network Booster Club or joining here as a channel member by hitting that join button. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.